You're listening to the Millennial's Choice Show, Canada's most trusted podcast on all things real estate, finance, and entrepreneurship. Here's your host, Matthew Ablacan.
What's going on, Choicers? Welcome to another episode of the Millennial's Choice Show. Really excited to be with you guys today. This is the second episode we're recording today. We record a bunch of content for you guys all in one shot. And it's been a while since we've been in the studio. People have been sick. We've been busy. Things have been very wild in our market. And so we're very excited to be with you guys today. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe, share with all your friends and family. We got an awesome episode for you guys today. Inflation is at 2%. Rates are on a decline. The feds are cutting by 50 basis points. Some say good. Some say that signals recession. There's so much to talk about. And we're with Francesco Serpe. He's with Y Mortgage. And he funds a lot of our clients' mortgages for them. He arranges the mortgages, works with A lenders, B lenders, private lenders, you name it. And we're good friends. Francesco, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. You and I have known each other for some time.
Yes.
So I'm very happy to be here today. Happy to discuss all the action that we've been seeing in the markets, economy, and so on. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And when we're talking about inflation and rates are going down and what the US is doing and all this stuff going on in our economy, I always want to bring it back to why it matters to you, the listener. And it matters because if you're invested in the real estate market and you might have a variable rate mortgage, then that'll make an impact on you. If you're trying to get into the market and rates are going down, then it'll have a positive impact on you because you can qualify for more money. Payments are more affordable than they once were. If rates go up, then it's the opposite effect. And so when you're looking at all these things, you kind of have to look at it together. And it's a holistic approach you have to take. And there's so much, to talk about. Also, uninsured mortgages. Now you could get a 30-year mortgage. What does that even mean for you guys listening to this? The cap has gone from $1 million to $1.5 million. So again, what does that mean? And we want to kind of explore all those things in this episode. Where do you want to start? What's the juicy stuff? The inflation or rate cuts?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to echo what you just said because there's been a ton of positive news to come out of, central banks, to come out of reports about the economy. And I think all of these combined holistically are definitely going to have some positive impact on the markets, right? On our market, or what we work in, being the housing market. So let's start with, inflation. Big news.
Yes. Coming
out at 2% recently. As early as last week, a few days ago, we got the news that inflation is down from 2.8% month over month to 2%. That's big news.
Yeah.
That's big news because it means that the central bank, Bank of Canada, can now have the green light to go ahead and start cutting that overnight lending rate, which we know as prime, giving us some reliefs on current mortgages and just overall getting some stability in the market again.
Yeah. Now, the target was always 2%. They said it from the very beginning. Again, an arbitrary number to us. They obviously have their methodology and as to why they've picked 2%. And we're not going to get into, the rabbit hole of how they track inflation and the unemployment numbers, which is really what they were looking at. We're not going to get into that. But the point is here and now, they're saying inflation's at 2%. And as you said, they have the green light to really start cutting. And we saw the US cut by 50 basis points, which I think was the first time they cut in a really long time in their central bank history. So do you think in October, towards the end of October, when the next interest rate announcement takes place from the Bank of Canada, do you think they're going to cut by 50? What's your prediction on that?
Yeah, good question. I think personally, now 2% is that healthy inflation number where we want to maintain and stay at. Given the fact that we're there, I think we have more motivation to do a cut, certainly by year end. Whether it's going to be 25 basis points or 50 or maybe 225 basis points remains to be seen. I think the inflation numbers coming out moving forward are going to be a very telltale sign of whether or not we'll see those cuts. But if you were to ask me, I'd probably suggest either, all things staying the same, we'll see another cut. Whether it's 25 or 50 basis points, I'd probably lean towards that 50 basis points.
It'll be interesting to see the September number in October, just before the cut.
Yeah.
Just before the announcement. Sorry.
That's right.
But I think we're both on the same page. I think there's going to be a cut. The number that they're going to cut by, what's funny? I said in the summertime that in September, they're going to cut 50. I said it didn't happen, but I just felt like, just from really understanding what they base their stuff on, and they were really, really trying to focus on unemployment, and meaning the central banks actually wanted unemployment to go up, which might sound counterintuitive, but I guess the idea is less people working, less money moving and exchanging hands in the economy. That'll slow down inflation. So it goes hand in hand. But it looks like we're almost there. And the Bank of Canada is becoming very bullish on signaling that there's going to be more rate cuts to come, and possibly even higher rate cuts instead of 25 basis points. But will we see an increase in real estate activity? Not necessarily prices, but real estate activity? I think so. I mean, I feel like just with boots on the ground, like working, the last few weeks, my phone's starting to ring again. And the last 2.5 years, we've been making the calls and hunting and trying to gather and, talk to people and give them solutions. Whereas now the calls are coming in and they sound like, hey, Matt, if you see anything that's a good idea, a good investment, let me know. That's what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think our Bank of Canada governor has a very delicate job in, keeping interest rates low, or deciding when the right time to cut interest rates will be, and not having us fall into a recession. But I think you nailed it on the head in that we started seeing some poor numbers on the job side of things, and the economy signaling that we may be heading into a recession. I think the fact that inflation came down gave them that opportunity to cut rates. You
think they should have cut them sooner? There's that argument that they overshot, right?
Yeah, if you ask me, I think interest rates 2 years ago, when we're going pre-COVID, were too low back then. I think there was an opportunity to increase rates back then, and it wasn't taken. Whether or not interest rates should have been cut before this last announcement or before when they were cut remains to be seen. I agree that my phone is starting to ring a lot more now. Activity is definitely picking up in the market. And, first couple of weeks of September, we start seeing we see a slowdown anyway with school starting and stuff like that. So that's only natural. But I do think that the interest rates cuts will signal kind of a welcome boost in the purchases that we're gonna see, I guess.
It's gonna encourage people that are on the sidelines Absolutely, a little more. Yeah. We were just talking off camera, guys, that he's not here, but Danny, he was just working on a couple of deals for our clients, and he got he was in a multiple offer situation on his listing for a townhouse in Newmarket, and multiple offers, record price. And then on the flip side, where he was representing the same clients on the purchase, he said that the person selling the house had 12 offers.
Wow.
They won. They didn't overpay, but they won Because you never know, right? Someone could throw a bullshit offer in there, right?
That's right.
You're listed for 1.3, they'll throw in 1.1 and see if you're, if you're desperate, right?
See if it goes, yeah.
But they had 12 offers and he won, and that's that's Bradford, Ontario.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is happening everywhere though, where there's good product, there's good, prices, and the property type. Condos are hurting, we know that. But I'm talking like low rise. This is happening in a lot of markets where they're getting bidding wars again. And we are only at the start of interest rate cuts. Can you imagine? Do you think, I think that by the end of this year in December, you're going to see high threes, mid to high three fixed rates. That's what I'm thinking. Because right now, the lowest fixed rate that I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen 4.29.
I'll go as far as saying we're only weeks away from seeing that, in my
Weeks
opinion.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. Bond yields
I'm
are
with you.
suggesting it.
Yeah.
If we go back 3 months, we're already seeing bond yields 100 basis points less than what they were 3 months ago.
But Francesco, our audience, they're everyday people.
Yep.
Right? What does that mean when you're talking bond yields, and what type of interest rate does that affect?
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the bond yield market or bond market directly impacts what we see on fixed rates.
Fixed rates.
Whereas government policy, fiscal, different kinds of metrics go into substantiating or dictating what the Bank of Canada's overnight rate will be, our prime rate, right? And that impacts our prime rate.
Which is then impacting variable rate mortgages.
Correct.
Or unsecured debt, like lines of credits, loans, credit cards, things like that.
That's right. Whereas on the bond side, that directly impacts what we get on fixed rate mortgages, or what the banks give us on fixed rate mortgages.
So we're seeing now the bond market is taking a hit. It's been taking a hit.
Yeah.
And that's resulting in lower fixed rates. So you think in the next few weeks, maybe by end of October, early November, you're going to see fixed rates in the 3. You're going to see a 3 in front of it?
I wouldn't be shocked.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Because they're already at 4.29. It's not that much further to go.
Yeah. Especially on renewals, we're starting to see banks really give fantastic rates on renewals.
Well, we're working on a renewal together now for one of our clients.
Yep.
And what did he get? 3.34?
In and around
on a fixed
there,
rate.
Yeah. On the fixed side.
Only reason I didn't quote that and say that's the lowest I've seen is because it's a renewal.
Yep.
So as you said, the cost of acquisition for the bank is less than it would be if we brought them new business, because then they have to pay you, they have to pay an underwriter, servicing, there's so much involved. Whereas with a renewal, it's pretty straightforward, so they can offer a little bit of an incentive to stay with them.
That's all baked into the bank's interest rate and their offers.
Yeah, so 3.34 is not bad.
We'll definitely get into that range in the next couple of weeks.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of closings personally coming up. Yeah. So I want to close those.
Absolutely.
By the way, full disclosure, you guys, you heard me. If you listen to our show, I'm very transparent about what I do. I'm okay with it. I'm an open book, my finances, my stuff, my properties. I'm a fixed rate guy. The one time I went variable was because the guy at the bank, he's a friend, put me at variable. And he thought I wanted variable.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, I wanted fixed. So he switched it to fixed right away, locked it in.
Wow.
But I was in variable by accident for a week.
I was going to ask you how it played out.
Well, my fixed currently is still locked in at 2.65.
Okay, not bad. Yeah,
it worked out well.
Yeah.
I'm just a fixed guy because when you kind of look at those charts that we talk to clients about, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of your clients about, where it's over time, the variable usually wins or outperforms the fixed. That's over time, right? I mean, you're typically looking at 20, 30 years, but how realistic is it for a property owner to have that property for that long? Not always.
Yeah, good point.
So if I'm in and out of a property in 5 years and I was fixed at 2%, and meanwhile we're in this environment where the variable, I think, went as high as 6.5 to 7, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Then I win.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, it all comes down to your comfort level and what you prefer, right? Let's assume you have a rental property, and I'm not going to say whether, going fixed or variable is the right way, one way or another. But let's assume you do have that rental property and you're used to a certain amount of cash flow every month from that rental property. Some would prefer knowing what their payment's going to be for that set amount of time, that fixed period of time, versus the variable, right?
Yeah.
Versus the unknown, right? Potential increases or decreases.
That's
right?
what it is for me.
Yeah.
It's the peace of mind of knowing.
Absolutely.
This is it, because my primary business is real estate.
Yep.
And so the last 2.5 years, whether I like it or not, everyone took a beating.
Yeah.
And how many realtors left the business?
Yeah.
How many mortgage brokers left the business, shut down?
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't ever want to be in that position where I'm so strapped, because I'm an investor too, and I have so much stuff going on, that the fixed rate to me, I don't have to think about it. It's done. It works.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've locked in at 2%. Other times I locked in for a year at 3%. And unfortunately now I'm at 6%, because then when it came up for renewal, it doubled.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a game.
You take the good with the bad.
You take the good with the bad. And then if you're in the game long enough and you really want to figure out what your average is, then you could put all that information together and figure out the average. But I'm really excited to see low rates again. Like,
oh yeah,
not
I
only
think
as a realtor, but as an investor,
I
I'm
hear
like,
you.
I want to refi. I want to get that cheap money.
I hear you.
Tax-free money.
I hear you.
That's what it is, right?
Now, will we see the days of 1.5% interest rates again? Likely not. Right.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
But one thing is for sure, bond yields are down. Central banks, like you said, even the Fed decreased rates 50 basis points last week. So it's definitely signaling for better times ahead.
Yeah. And there is the school of thought of whenever a central bank does announce a 50 basis point cut, that they are basically telling you we're in trouble. Like, we need to be aggressive now because we're very close to a recession. But again, there's always a lag between interest rate policy and then what actually happens in the market. So we won't know.
Yeah.
Like you said it earlier, September, slower month usually in our business. Kids are going back to school. There's an adjustment.
That's right. Yeah.
Summertime is a naturally slower month too, slower season too.
Vacations.
Yeah. July, August was terrible this year in 2024 for real estate. But already we're seeing the activity up now.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So these things amplify what normally is already there. A slower market, higher rate environment. People are on vacation. They don't want to think about it. It's a slow season. And that's part of why the inflation was so low.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's see what it's going to be in September, then October. You never know. It might be one of those situations where, they cut rates and then all of a sudden things start to go through the roof and they raise it again, or they keep it the same. I doubt it.
Yeah.
But you never know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
They say one thing, they do another. Inflation back in 2022, 2021, it's transitory. You remember that word?
Yeah.
They said they were going to start raising rates in 2024. They started raising them in 2022. So listen, you don't know. You have to do what's right for you and your family.
Absolutely. I think with that, at that particular point in time, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's fixing in, whether it's staying variable, you have to do what's right for you at that particular point in time. Now, Jerome Powell in the U.S., our Bank of Canada governor, have both stated that we will be seeing cuts moving forward as well. So I take that as a positive. I think we will have a very strong fall market and perhaps into the winter as well. But what I'm most excited about, especially if things all remain the same or we keep seeing further decreases, is spring 2025. It's just going to be gangbusters, I'm expecting.
That's what Danny thinks too. And we were talking about this yesterday because I have a very important property that I'd like to list.
That's right, yeah.
And I'm like, do I take advantage of this fall upswing?
Yeah.
Or do we gamble a little bit and wait till the spring?
Yeah.
Because if it continues on a positive trajectory, I could only imagine what's going to happen in spring.
Yeah.
There's going to be so much, bidding wars and competition. And, And it's I'm not saying it's going to go back to, early 2022 when anything was just selling for, there's 40 offers on it. Like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's definitely going to be that confidence within consumers, right?
Yeah.
Shifting a little bit of focus, because you are the expert on the mortgage side of things, the federal government, in an attempt to gain favor and gain some votes maybe, came out with some, they call the most drastic mortgage rule changes. Like they've been using strong words to label these changes, which
Getting some dramatic headlines.
Headlines, right, is what it is. And, two things that changed is if you're basically putting less than 20% down, right? And the property's under 1.5 million as a purchase price. At the time, if it was under 1 million, then you could only get a 25-year mortgage. So now they increased it to 1.5, but you could get a 30-year mortgage. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are, for first-time home buyers.
For first-time home buyers.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And listen, has it been dramatized? Absolutely. Right. Is it gonna have a positive effect on the market? I think so, for sure. Is it big news? Absolutely. And I think, it's only gonna help those looking to get into the market. And it's only gonna help spur the market even more.
So when you bought a property that was $1 million, second you touched $1 million, minimum 20% down payment. And as a result, you unlock the option to get a 30-year mortgage.
Correct.
So now they've changed that to 1.5.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So can we do a quick scenario for the people?
Sure.
So I have my mortgage calculator here. Yeah. Let's say we're going to stick to let's do a price of 900,000. Let's just say 900,000. So the rules are still there where if you go over the 500K price point, that number between 500K and whatever the actual number is, you have to put 10% as a down payment. That rule is still there. So we'll assume it's 10% total. Let's just assume they're going to put 90,000 for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
So you buy a property for 900,000, you're going to put 10% in, which is $90,000 as your down payment. Let's say your interest rate is 4%. And if you had, under the old rules, a 25-year mortgage, then your payment is approximately $4,300 a month.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds
Does
about right.
Does that look correct?
Yep.
4,300.
Yep.
So under the new rule changes, that mortgage can go from 25 years to 30. You can choose.
Which is going to have a major impact on your cash flow or your bottom line at the end of the day.
So let's see. So $4,300 under the old rules, or if you just want to stick even today with a 25-year mortgage, $4,300. So if you go 30-year, it drops to about $3,800 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saving $500 a month.
You're saving, but I mean, eventually you're gonna take 5 years longer to pay it.
Yeah, because now your mortgage is being extended from 25 years to pay it off to 30.
Exactly.
So there naturally will be more interest in the long run.
That's right.
But in the short run, you're saving in that scenario $500 a month.
It's making it more affordable for people to jump in.
So I look at it, and in my shoes and my with my blinders on, you guys, I don't want anyone listening to this to think like Matthew is so, he can't relate to us or he's stuck up or whatever. To me, that doesn't make a big difference for me, for my mortgage, but I could see why $6,000 a year in savings and $500 a month, which is literally a car payment in some scenarios, is a big deal.
It's going to help with qualifying.
It also helps with qualifying. So explain that a little bit too. Absolutely.
So when we qualify clients on a mortgage for a purchase, for example, we use what's called TDS, or total debt service ratio. And that incorporates all the client's costs, including this new mortgage that they're going to be taking on. That is stress tested as well.
Right.
Stress tested to ensure a buffer or safety net, if you will, to secure or guess confidently give the client peace of mind that they will qualify for this mortgage, or the lender peace of mind that they will qualify for this mortgage. So based on this, if you have, that a payment from $4,200 down to $38, that particular client who's qualifying for this mortgage will now use that $3,800 payment versus the $4,200 to qualify. So
Right.
that makes it easier for someone to qualify.
Yeah. So guys, whoever's listening to this, so total debt service, they look at your income, obviously, and then they look at all your debts that you have, and then you have to be within a certain percentage for the lender to feel comfortable to give you that money. And so obviously, if you're borrowing the same amount of money, but it's costing you less every single month, then you should be able to qualify easier or for more.
That's right.
That's the idea. So every time these changes are happening, or rates are going down, or there's more flexibility with mortgage qualifying, it only should have a positive impact on people, right?
Absolutely.
We would assume so. So it's like a perfect storm for the real estate market to do really well. Not the Trojan horse, but what's the phrase that I'm looking for? The unicorn in this, or it's not the right word, but you get what I'm trying. Let me see if I make sense. The key thing to watch, the key indicator, I think, is going to be supply. Because at the same time as these rates are coming down and it's a little more flexible for first-time home buyers to get in, and inflation is low, we are at an all-time high with supply. I think the last time I checked, we have 6 months of supply and inventory in the market right now, especially when it comes to condos.
Okay.
So I really want to see how that plays out, combined with all these mortgages that are coming up for renewal.
Yeah.
And although rates are going down, people have to renew now. They are renewing at a higher rate compared to what they had.
Yep. So yeah, it's
like a perfect storm.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Like we're going to see renewals coming up between the tail end of 2024 into 2025. And don't forget, like these are people that are going to be coming from 1-2% mortgage rates and renewing at new rates, whether it's at 3 or 4%, and that's going to make an impact on their payment, right?
Right.
Affordability can become a major issue at that point in time. So it, to your point, is going to be a telltale sign of what's going to happen in the market. There's going to be some people that can't afford and may be forced to list and sell their current property.
Well, let's map it out a little bit. So a lot of the inventory challenges we're facing now is a result of the supply chain issues, where at the beginning of COVID throughout till about 2021, 2022, if a project had not started construction, do you remember how they had shut people down?
Yep.
You're not going to go to work on sites.
Yep.
They actually, the property management in our office shut us down, thinking that it was all construction stops. But because we had already started the finishing of this office, we were able to continue legally.
Wow.
So a lot of different builders had to put pause on their construction, on their projects. And then simultaneously, rates started going up in 2022. The market took a halt.
Yeah.
Pre-construction just really stalled. And whether you like pre-construction real estate or not, that's how new inventory comes online. You have to build housing. So there's this effect that happened where these projects that were purchased and I'm one of them, I literally closed on September 17th, a condo that I purchased in 2017. 7 years later.
Yep.
7 years later, guys. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And my point being is some stuff I bought in 2019 and early 2020 also closed this year. So that stuff lagged. It took too long and it all came together.
Yeah.
And so that's a storm of now, okay, high interest rates, rents haven't caught up yet. It doesn't make sense for me to hold it. Let me list it for sale. There's a lot of investors that were in that position. And so you're seeing this condo market now full of supply. And part of it is that, but if we map it out, if as rates continue to go down, I think a lot of people that are just hounding on this supply is going to cause a recession or prices to come down. If rates go down to 2%, 3%, maybe that investor now sees that it makes sense and decides to refi into a better mortgage rate and keep the condo.
And stay invested. Absolutely. Yeah. It could suddenly make sense at the end of the day for them to stay invested in that particular property. And there are a lot of people, a lot of investors out there that are scratching their head right now. And they're sitting on the sideline deciding whether or not they're going to list, because let's face it, between the headaches involved with being a landlord, between the work involved in being a landlord, and now not even being able to cash flow in certain scenarios, is it worth it, right? So I think a lot of investors are sitting on the sidelines, and they're going to be deciding in the next couple of months, depending on what interest rates are doing, whether they're going to stay invested or decide to sell.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see. I sold one of my condos that I bought this year. I just closed it privately.
Yeah.
And I sold it. I've never done that. I always buy and hold. Always buy and hold. But this particular one just did not make sense to hold it, even at a good rate. I kept running the math and you're still going to be cash flow negative. It just didn't make sense. So I listed it, flipped it, lost the HST rebate, paid $20K in commissions, and I still made a profit of about $30K. So I got all my investment back plus some. We'll pay some tax on it, no problem. But my point being is that I just got out of it. So there's a lot of people that think like that too. That's what's happening right now with the inventory. And then on the flip side, I looked at another condo that I'll be closing soon. And I went to go do the inspection and it looked so good. And I love the finishes. I love the area, love what the builder did that I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to keep this one.
Yeah.
And by the time the mortgage comes up, probably summer of next year, rates are going to be hopefully super low. Rents are going to keep going up, in my opinion.
Well, I can't see them coming down now, right?
The last 2.5 years, we have an episode that you guys can listen to and watch where Marianne gave you the stats. Year over year, from 2023 to 2024, inventory for rentals were significantly up, and we saw prices come down.
Interesting.
Yeah, in between 2023 and 2024.
Okay.
And I had to tell a lot of my clients where tenants were turning over, you're not going to get the same money.
Wow.
It was almost like 10% less.
Okay.
But then something happened summer of 2024 where all of a sudden it just turned.
Yeah.
And I literally remember like the date, like August 10th, August 15th. In 1 week, I woke up and all my rental listings gone. They got taken up, and now we're seeing multiple offers. So it's starting to come back, I find. Again, depends where it is, property type, etc. But I strongly believe by next summer, rents are going to be higher, rates are going to be lower. I think I'm going to keep this condo and make some money because I bought it at such a good price.
It's got to give. Or else there's nothing in it for the investor to jump into these properties and rent them out.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So I'm bullish, and at the same time, I'm cautious because there's so much going on. Yeah. Elections, wars, rumors of wars. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen. We're not really deeply involved in those things. So anything can happen that can trigger a collapse or trigger the opposite effect. And you have something called stagflation that they're talking about now. So we've seen the market cool down a little bit over the last 2.5 years with these interest rate hikes. And they don't talk about that too much, but we have seen prices come down quite a bit in a lot of areas. I've seen like 20 to 30% in some markets come down. I'm talking about you buying a property and it's gone down. The Bradford scenario I was telling you about. The guy bought it for 1.7, couldn't close. Bought it in 2021, towards the tail end of 2021. Bought it for 1.7 million, couldn't close the deal. Not our buyer, just the buyer in general. And the property was then sold this year for 1,380,000. Like, that's a big drop.
Those are one-off. I mean, those scenarios happen, right? But I've always said, and we've talked about this, that leading up to where we are now in the market to about 3 months ago, if you could get something that's depressed in price, call it, on an assignment and get like a 90-day close, you know, play that interest rate game, see bond yields keep dropping, variable rates come down and stuff like that, you could score a fantastic deal.
There's deals. And like, I think I bought that in July. I don't remember whatever the date was on the APS on the agreement.
I think it was, late July, August.
Yeah. And guess what? My closing's in December.
That's right.
Like even that, we got like a super flexible closing.
Yep.
You know, the builder was willing to deal.
Yep.
And so like, that's what I keep telling people. If you're in it for the long run, now's the time, because I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe in 6 months, now was not the time.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But we know fundamentally we have a supply and demand issue. Mm-hmm. They're not building enough homes. They're making it more expensive to build homes that you can purchase and own. And the demand is still there. It's just sidelined. It's just quiet. We have a lot of supply in the market now, but once that gets absorbed or it comes off the market, plans change, people change, you're going to see we're going to be back in that environment where there's a frenzy, especially if rates are going to be low again.
I don't doubt it for a second. Yeah.
I remember February of 2022. In December 30th, 2021, I sold a property, my first property I ever sold, not as a realtor, my personal property. And I sold it. It was New Year's Eve, and we were about to go out and have a celebration. And I'm looking at the offer. So we had lots of like 50 plus showings, and I ended up getting a few offers, multiple offers on a townhouse in Brampton. I bought the property for $390 I want to say I got into the real estate 2012. I bought it in like 2014. Okay. Pre-construction. Okay. It was built in 2016. Mm-hmm. And then now we're talking 2021. So 5 years later. I bought it for $390. The offer in front of me is firm, meaning no conditions. The buyer cannot walk away from this deal if I sign it. $990. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So $600K gain. Yeah. And I'm like looking at it, and Sarah, my wife, goes, "What's wrong? Like, isn't that what you wanted?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm so emotionally attached to it. I shouldn't be. I know I'm not supposed to be, but I worked so hard to get it, right?" So I ended up selling it. And the closing date was Valentine's Day 2022. So February 14th, I think. Okay. 2022.
A few months later.
Yeah. When did rates go up? March 2022. Yeah. That was the first increase. Yeah. Sold it, closed it, got the deal done. And that property has not, like that area has not recovered after the rates went up. It has not recovered. I always look back to see, like, was it a good decision? Sure. And larger properties are selling somewhere in the mid 8s now. Wow. So we did good. Yeah. We did very good. Good. No complaints about it. But my point being is that market was insane. Like insane. So I could only see it coming back if the conditions surrounding it are the same. And people might be listening and say, "You're just a realtor. You want to just promote this stuff." Yeah, you know what? I am a realtor and I do want to promote real estate. I'm not going to promote crypto, right? But at the same time, like, what was going on there, guys? Yeah. There was a pandemic and prices were going through the roof. I know. The economy was shut down.
Kind of like the opposite of what you would think.
Opposite. But why? Yeah. Because they cut rates.
That's right.
Rates were so low.
Money was cheap.
Free money. Yeah. And then they gave people money. Mm-hmm. And so people took that money and put it into, whatever. And institutions that got money and corporations that got money, they invested it. They bought assets with it. Yep. And who knows what's going to happen? I'm bullish on it. I'm bullish on it. I'm optimistic, but I'm cautious. What's the worst that could happen if there's a bank collapse or whatever? You know what the government's going to do. They're just going to print more money behind it, guys. They're going to continue to inflate it.
It's happened before. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that sentiment. I've always been bullish on real estate. And, we can only talk about what's within our area over here. GTA.
That's right.
It's almost like the center of the universe. It's where you want to be, right?
Yes. I'm not talking about America's market. I'm not talking about the market in Alberta. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about anything. I'm licensed in Ontario. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything else. And so I'm going to be bullish on it. Could there be a little bit of a short-term decline? Maybe, but
for sure.
But for 2.5 years, we've seen a decline.
Yeah.
They might not have posted it in the headlines, but it's there, it's happening. I know a lot of banks also didn't put their power of sales on the market yet. They didn't really act on it. They kind of worked with the borrowers a little bit. That's a very unique thing too.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens.
We'll see what the follow will be. There have been delinquencies, right? I'd love to know how many bankruptcies we've seen over these past couple of years, how many power of sales we've seen, like what the stats actually are. But you know what you would know better than I do what has happened to prices and how they've been impacted.
Yeah, I want to say like 20 to 30%. I've seen some markets higher than others, lower than others. Obviously, I've seen some lower than 20%. Some markets just stayed the same or went up a little bit, but most of it was 20 to 30%. Like I look at deals every day and I'm like, this is a deal. This is a deal compared to where it was at. But what's going to happen? I don't know. Maybe there's a further decline. I don't know, but we've seen this decline. Even Danny lives in Bradford too. I've been talking to Danny and I'm like, Bradford took a larger hit than I think it should have. Like it took the same hit that Barrie did. Yeah. Like Barrie is one thing. Bradford is 20 minutes away from Vaughan. Yeah. Just going up the 400. So I don't think it was justified. Like I didn't think that hit was justified. But people panic. People were in bad situations. People that bought at 1%, 2% that shouldn't have bought because they couldn't withstand interest rate increases, probably shouldn't have bought. They're in hot water. They're listing their property. That always happens. That always happens. And most of the people that are under power of sale that I saw, most of them were private lenders. And we know that private lending is a risky business to be in. And if someone's going private for, you have to know what the reasons are. But if someone's going private, that means typically a bank said no, typically a B lender said no. And, this was their last resort. Yeah. So is that a person that should be owning the real estate? I don't know.
Listen, I agree. I'd say as a general statement, makes sense. But there are circumstances in which private lending, being the only other alternative, makes complete sense for a client, right?
I agree.
You nailed it. Typically, clients that do go through the private lending process don't qualify for an A or B lender. So they have to go the alternative lending way, which is on the private, whether it's through a MIC, being a mortgage investment company, or an individual investor or syndicated investors.
Yeah.
So, under the circumstances, it would be right for, a particular client. But as a general kind of statement, yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, I went private, or I was mentioning earlier, I went private on a deal just to close it with ease, no issues qualifying, and then flip it. Yeah. It just made the most sense for me.
Yeah. Less hassle
at that point in my life. I also had my second baby at that time.
For sure.
A lot to process and think about. Buying a property might seem easy. It ain't easy.
No.
Buying it might be easy. Closing it's a different story.
Yeah.
So it's a lot, right? So
it's like a full-time job.
It really is.
Up until when for sure.
And as a landlord, that's why people have property managers. It's a full-time job.
Very true.
Carson had a question.
Yeah, you mentioned the people that got in and maybe they were stretching themselves when the interest rates were 1.5%. Isn't that why the stress test is in place, though, to be able to protect people for those higher rates potentially? Or maybe this was just a special circumstance with COVID?
It's true.
Solid question.
Yeah, it's true. But the stress test is the bank's posted rate plus 2, right? We saw interest rates go up much higher than that. We're also going to be seeing people renewing at those 1-2% interest rates suddenly closer to 4%, depending on what term they go with. So we're going to be seeing a lot of people paying or used to paying a certain amount, now renewing at a much higher periodic payment, monthly, biweekly, whatever it's at.
Yeah, and I think just to build on top of that and to go back to the question, from a qualifying standpoint, they qualified. So that's why they were able to get the mortgage. But they might not have realized what the payment would be if the rates actually go up. That's not what something is actually discussed. That's more internal for the banks. So all of a sudden, these people are hit with this payment. And they're like, holy smokes, like my income hasn't changed.
That's right. Yeah.
But now I have to pay this, and maybe I don't want to pay this. Or maybe it's cheaper if I sell and just rent something temporarily. So, or maybe people got laid off. So they qualified at one point, but they wouldn't qualify today.
Yeah.
There's so many factors that
Well,
play
they
a
get
role
used
in
to a
that.
certain lifestyle.
They
right?
get used to a
and
certain.
then suddenly,
How many realtors,
changed.
shooters? Everyone was a shooter in 2021
Yeah.
and 2022. You couldn't even, or 2020 and 2021. Luxury cars were selling like no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, they
Rolex,
still did.
everybody was a shooter
Yeah.
in the industry.
Yeah.
And now you don't hear anything,
It's a bit more modest, eh?
right? Because they didn't save money.
Yeah.
People didn't save. Remember the stat that we've talked about many times on the podcast, where for every dollar a Canadian was bringing in, they were spending $1.70. That means they're not saving; they're actually going into debt.
You see, and that's
Right?
what scares me about this next generation, about our generation, younger, is, and I'd love to see stats on how many Canadians or younger Canadians now actually have an RSP or actually have a TFSA, and are they actively investing? Because having that nest egg and having that money and, savings, that's big.
It is big, and as we said throughout this episode, only time will tell.
Yeah.
With what happens and how bad it really is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying buy real estate. I'm just saying do what's right for you and your family.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Markets go up and down throughout history. That's one thing for sure that we know.
Mm-hmm.
They go up and down. It's gone down. Are we at the bottom, or is there more room for it to go down?
What are your thoughts?
I think in the short term we'll see a spike up,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people hurting,
Yeah.
and I see a lot of people that are saying, "Find me a place."
Yeah. I think we've seen the worst of it in terms of policy and rate. We're at the bottom of the barrel from that perspective. However, given we work in a lagging industry, the fallout remains to be seen, but we'll just, as quickly as we see a bad fallout, we'll start seeing things improve quite quickly.
It's a good point to end off on. Recessions and negative markets only stay for a very, very short
That's right.
period.
Mm-hmm.
The recovery is usually quicker, but sometimes it does take longer to recover, but it lasts longer at the same time. So recessions and negative markets, they're not here a long time. Again, I'm not talking about if we're in a situation where we're at a world war. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking in general.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, we'll see, man. Canada's a different market. Don't watch the American news. It has nothing really to do with us.
Yeah.
It's a completely different animal and market. The way they lend money there is like the wild, wild west.
Oh, yeah. I see what you
There's
mean.
all kinds of stuff that they do that we don't do. We have different fundamentals. And also, it doesn't take them 4 years, maybe unless you're in California or New York, but it doesn't take you 4 years to buy something, a condo, and then build it. It happens a lot quicker. They don't have the red tape that we have. And I say that because that red tape does directly impact supply. So we have a growing population. We're very pro-immigration. We're constantly bringing people in from all parts of the world. We have millennials, Gen Zs looking to enter the market. We have older people staying in their homes and properties longer. That transition of wealth and that wealth transfer hasn't happened that much yet.
Yeah.
We're going to really see what happens in the
I
near
think
future.
you touched on a really good point. So my background. I worked at a financial institution for 18 years prior to coming into the broker space. Now that I'm in the broker space, and because I've had experience working with commercial banking to a degree at the financial institution I was with, I'm able to work with builders, construction. So I've done my share of construction financing on this side as well. But one thing I'm really noticing, and I wish we got better at in Canada, GTA, or Ontario, is the red tape behind builders. and getting shovels in the ground quicker, whether it's at the municipal level or provincial. We got to do better, especially if we have a shortage of homes. Let's get them building, right?
Yeah, it's a good point, and there's a lot of stats out there. Maybe we'll do another episode on that, where by 2028 we are going to be at such a low inventory number that it's going to be a very big problem.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens. Maybe there's an election looming and different policies might come into place. I know the Ontario Premier has passed legislation and has indicated to municipalities that you need to fast track things. Mm-hmm. And when I do talk to builders and when I do talk to city planners and also private planners, they are submitting applications and getting approvals a lot quicker mm-hmm. and for more density. So hopefully that'll somehow balance itself out. But apparently by 2028, we're going to have a huge problem with supply. So let's see. We have to make it there first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Francesco, this was great. Where can people find you? Instagram, Facebook, or where do you like to connect with people?
Anywhere. You have my contact details by phone, email. I'm active on Instagram. Thanks for having me. And I react very quickly to people when they reach out and they look for a call back or whatever.
Awesome. We'll put all that information in the notes in the description. Guys, if you watched or listened to this to the very end, good for you. You're one of the few people that are educated more than the average population now. If you had any questions about this episode, connect with us. And until next time, you guys, we're out.